Happy Monday, everyone. It's a Meta Monday here at the HODL fandom, where I analyze the past week's metadata to see any interesting stats or trends. We have a number of things we need to discuss, including the Miles Morales drop, and there's a lot to go through with that, and some weird things the whales are doing. But let's start with a quick snapshot of the overall state of Veve. Since October the 1st, we have around 28,000 active users, and my criteria to define an active user is someone who made a transaction on the market. Last week, we had around 18.5K users, so this past week was a bit of a drop, which was expected since we had Comic-Con in that prior week. Participation on the market heavily involved both the shrimps and the dolphins. With most platforms like Veve, the population usually is bottom heavy like this. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into that Miles Morales drop. Now, I've seen a lot of bot complaints, and I will address everything in today's video. I've organized my thoughts and analysis into 3 categories: logical analysis, database analysis, and then I'll play devil's advocate, where I put myself on the other side of the table. Within the first category, let's address the unique owners chart on IMX. I saw this chart floating around with about an increase of 450 unique owners, and this was being tied to the thought that the new users dominated the drop. I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed when I saw that type of conclusion being made solely from this chart. If we remove the dates and just look at the peaks and the valleys, pretending we're just looking at a fresh chart, can you tell me where the bots came in? Maybe here, maybe there, really maybe any one of these. In fact, these areas here would be the most logical place to see an uptick in users on this chart. Why? Because of Decon London, where Veve apparently had a large booth, and that was a big marketing opportunity. And the second one, because of something called Comic-Con. Now, I've never been to Comic-Con. We have something called Fan Expo here in Toronto. It's pretty big. But it's nothing compared to Comic-Con. It is the biggest event in this space that we operate in, a space for fans and collectors, in the genre of all of Veve's offerings. The San Diego and New York Comic-Cons are essentially the Super Bowls of our space. It's our World Cup. It's our Stanley Cup Game 7. There is no better stage to market this product, where we should expect a better than normal conversion because the people there, they're already fans and they're already collectors. Oh, and Veve shared a booth with Marvel. And in this booth, Ecomi also announced that Miles Morales, a very popular character, was dropping in a few days. If we did not see a bump in new users around then I'd be more worried about our ability to convert marketing to sales. I would view that as more worrisome and a symptom of a potentially bigger issue of this overall NFT space. If we logically let the data in this chart speak to us, it says these bumps in unique owners here and here are the most justified because of the aforementioned big events. But even if we ignore Comic-Con and Decon for some strange reason, if we're going to call bots here, why didn't we call it anywhere else when there are the exact same type of data points? I'll tell you why. We're unfortunately not letting the data speak for itself. Data is being chosen with selection bias to fit a narrative fueled, unfortunately, by the negative emotions of missing out with a premier drop. My conclusion on the chart, using it solely to prove that we have bots, is incorrect. Next, I want to address the private listings. Now, if anyone remembers Q1 of this year, the bots ran Veve. They dominated the secondary market listings. But it looked very different than it does today. They looked very obvious, and you can find them. You'd see generic name plus a 5-digit number after them, like Joe12345, all over the place. It looks very different today. Yes, there are some private listings. That's not the same. Simply because an account is private doesn't make it a bot. My account was private until I started creating content on Veve. If this channel didn't exist, I'm sure it would still be private. We know most of the people on this platform are casuals who own just a few collectibles, and I can relate. Back in April of 2021, when all I had was a Batman and 3 Murmikoros, there was zero incentive to show them off. For sure, those Murmikoros were staying private. Combine that with the fact that the public hears of crypto hacks almost every other week. Why would someone in this space volunteer more information about themselves, about their profile, about a collection that influencers openly say will make us all millionaires? So at absolute best, to label private accounts blindly as bots is a coin toss. We should not be taking out the pitchforks on a coin toss. If this was a court of law, it would be easily dismissed as inconclusive. We need actual evidence. So let's move on to our database analysis. Now I'm going to paraphrase the bot sentiments here. We have new wallets holding a few collectibles, and they all dumped after the drop. These new wallets are bots, and they dominated the drop. New wallets being bot wallets is a common assumption because the belief is that the bot account gets created, it lands the drop through malicious means, and then cashes out or gives away the collectible or consolidates it to a main account before getting banned, and then it rinses and repeats. Now, I'm going to convert these sentiments into formulas because that's how my brain processed that all. So new wallets equals wallets with a few collectibles. Plus, if they dump after the drop, they equal a bot. New users equal new wallets, and therefore bots because of the aforementioned bot rinse and repeat system. And bot wallets dominated the drop. This is the criteria that we need to confirm or deny. Now, I'm going to address each and every one of these variables based on the data that is available. The first thing I did was establish a baseline of drop activity prior to the Miles Morales drop. This is the activity from October the 1st to the 12th. If we got a big deviation from this baseline, like say a big increase or decrease in the small wallets, then hey, maybe we're onto something. Let's now look at the wallet distribution of who landed a Miles Morales. Hey, that's a big difference where these small wallets or wallets with very little activity did do very well on the drop. I think this is where everyone would stop and conclude we got screwed by bots. But before you get your pitchforks out, you know I always question everything. And the message inside the numbers tells a very different story. If we label small wallets as those holding 7 or less collectibles, there were just over 1,300 small wallets that landed a Miles Morales. Let's go back to that criteria being used to identify bots. Small wallets equals new wallets, right? Well, I looked at every single one of those 1,300 wallets. And if you want to double check my work, just a heads up, it takes several hours. To gauge whether a wallet is new, you cannot just look at how many collectibles they're holding. You have to look at the wallet activity and when they first started doing things like minting, buying, or selling. Of those 1,300 wallets, if we define new as having their first activity within a week of the drop date, only 18% were actually new. If we expand that definition of new to having their first activity within the entire month of October, then that only goes up slightly to 21%. So with about 80% of small wallets that actually hit on the Miles Morales drop not being new, we can definitively say small wallets do not equal new wallets. In fact, many of the 80% were many months old. There were some oddities I'd see here and there that I'll get into a bit later in the Devil's Advocate section, but for all intents and purposes, small does not equal new. If we normalize that bar just to the true new accounts, then we get something that looks very normal to me. We do, however, still have a larger than normal amount of small but old wallets landing the drop. On one hand, it does make sense knowing that the general population distribution is heavily weighted on the casuals. It only takes 190 collectibles to be in the top 1%, remember. It also makes sense to me as someone who is casual on many different NFT platforms. I only participate when there's something cool happening. On May the 4th, a buddy of mine messaged me about a Darth Vader skin that was available to be won for my Zed Run horses. So I went on, I won the skin, and I haven't logged on since. Another buddy of mine texts me when there's a valuable NFL all-day drop or an NBA Top Shot drop happening that I might be interested in, and then I'll look into participating. Similarly, when there's a Grail dropping on Veve, I message them the same. So when you have a drop with this much hype from the influencers, I can see the same thing applying to the casuals on Veve, wiping off the cobwebs on the app and then trying for the drop. Could they also be bot accounts just lurking around? Sure. This also leads to another data point where the bot detection software would have recorded another inhumanely fast click, an increased chance of getting flagged by that software. So at best, without any additional information, this leads to another inconclusive coin toss. And in the real world, a conviction will never be made on these coin toss scenarios. Because of that logic, I'm a human with Veve, but I'm a bot on Top Shot. I'm a bot with NFL All Day. I'm a bot with Zed Run, So Rare, FIFA Collect, just to name a few. I'm a bot apparently more times than a real person using that logic. Here's an example so you understand how flawed this logic is. They say beauty marks or moles can be an indicator that you have melanoma or skin cancer. Using the same logic, that small wallets or wallets with little activity might be symptomatic of bot activity, but then trying to convince everyone that we have a bot problem solely based on that is like telling everyone with a mole that they have cancer. That's obviously incorrect. We need more direct evidence because generalizations like this are very misleading to the public. So the fact remains, the criteria to which we use to judge a bot or not, that small wallets equals new wallets and therefore is a bot wallet, is proven incorrect because, as I showed with the real numbers, most small wallets who landed the drop, who landed a Miles Morales, 80% of them were not new. That myth is busted. Now let's address the dumping of the collectibles after the drop. For those who landed a Miles Morales, only 36% sold it within the next 24 hours. Once again, that's pretty definitive. People did not dump. In addition, those who did sell, it was clearly the middle tiers who sold the most. So going back to the criteria, we bust two things. People did not dump right after, and small wallets were not the ones dumping more than others. With all that combined, we can also bust the claim that bots dominated this drop. There is no conclusive evidence to prove that. I want to be clear here. I'm not averse to constructive criticism for Ecomi and Veve. When their bot measures were not enough, I put out a video with my own research and recommendations on how to solve them. I called Veve's market crash last year when I analyzed the Top Shot market. It wasn't one of those wishy-washy predictions where I call both sides, I literally called that out. In fact, there seems to be a correlation of spiciness in my videos with the amount of flames in the thumbnail. So when I see negative things happening to their market or anything in their space, I'm not afraid to call it out. This is just not one of them. The criteria used to make bot claims on this drop are based on erroneous assumptions and are unequivocally incorrect. The reality is that there were less than 3,000 Miles Moraleses available and maybe 27,000 active users during the month of October, based on my definition of active users. That leaves 24,000 people destined to be disappointed. However, the question you need to be asking, or at least the first question I would ask if I was on the other side of the table, is if X, Y, and Z are not the criteria to determine if an account is a bot, then what is? I'd say the first answer is stuff the public will never be able to see, and that's what the bot detection software is doing. Monitoring click rates, suspicious traffic, or any unusual behavior, and all the stuff that they do. The answer for us, the public, is a little more difficult at this point in time. There are clear bot activities that we will be able to see when transfers are re-enabled. That was key in finding some big bot operators on other NFT platforms, such as NBA Top Shot. When transfers are re-enabled, I will be monitoring them and looking for suspicious activity. For people like myself, at a very basic level, I do need more and consistent data. The first thing would be dollar amounts on all the transactions. Now, I alluded to some odd activity earlier. Don't worry, it was a small amount of wallets that would not have changed my analysis by a material amount. But if I had dollar amounts, then I could either dismiss them as normal or elevate them to suspicious. Now, I'm not going to go and say what those oddities are because they could be normal. And if there's one lesson I've learned making this video is that we're just way too eager to start a riot. I also said we need consistent data. There shouldn't be large gaps in the metadata provided. I know it was said this rollout will be slow, but this is really, really slow. My plea to the Ecomi team is if you're somehow watching this is, again, I need more and consistent data. My employer pays me a pretty penny for me to do what I do, for my skill set. And my job largely involves working with data. I'm doing this all for free, essentially working as an internal control, kind of an auditor for your sales activities. My ability to detect issues is a function of the quality of information provided. But even just to align with the holistic spirit of blockchain, having fully transparent and decentralized information should be accessible to all. So with Miles Morales wrapped up, let's close off with some interesting whale activity. The most sought after item on the secondary market was the New Mutants comic. What was interesting was when I looked at the details. Wallet number 4, whale wallet number 4, grabbed 25, and 23 of them were common. Wallet number 80 grabbed 25 as well, but they were all uncommon, and a handful of other wallets grabbed a bunch. I don't have a theory as to why. I thought maybe initially, maybe they're grabbing it because they like the comic. But then why were they only grabbing a specific rarity? Then maybe I thought they're grabbing it for a burning activity, like something I theorized in my renting and burning video, which I did a long time ago. It's an oldie, but still relevant. I still think there's a lot of relevant ideas there. Maybe they were grabbing it because there were special deals on them, but I wouldn't know because I don't have the dollar values. What do you guys think? Well, just to wrap things up here, today's episode of Meta Monday was focused on using data to pour water on a hot topic, a hot negative perception that I feel was fueled purely because people missed out on a profitable drop. One of the reasons I created the HODL fandom was to bridge the gap between the crypto and the fandom. We're focused too much on profit and not the amazing stories behind the things on the app, the collectibles and the comics. So I'm going to conclude things here by highlighting a comic that we got last week, but nobody seems to care about it because it's not profitable. It's Old Man Logan, one of the more memorable stories I read in this modern era of comics. The reveal of why Logan stopped using his claws, the creepy imagery with a red skull, and what made Logan finally flip out to pop his claws once again in a scene that looks like it belongs on Marvel Max, all combined to make a pretty cool story. If you have a chance, check it out. Anyways, thanks for joining Meta Monday. Have an awesome week, and I'll see you in the next video.